Hey everybody, this is Holly Robinson and this is Microbiology PowerPoint, the last part 4, and we're going to be talking today about fungi. So here we go. Now fungi are in the domain Eukarya, okay, so they have complex organelles and they have nuclei and all of that, and then they're in their own kingdom called fungi. And some general characteristics about fungi that are important to know. They are strictly heterotrophs, which mean that they have to get their food from an outside source. Fungi do not photosynthesize. They do not make their own food, and so they have to get their food from something else, okay, another organism. And they release enzymes into the environment that help them digest nutrients, and so digestion happens outside of their body. And then most of them are saprophytic, which means that they decompose dead animals, plants, and microbes. Fungi are very important decomposers. Okay. They break down complex organic molecules and then return inorganic nutrients to producers of food, okay, that are photosynthesizers. Okay. And fungi help degrade cellulose and lignin that's in the woody part of trees. So you can see fungi like on trees that are dead or trees that are decaying. And the body of a fungus can actually become large enough to cover acres of land. Fungi can grow really large. And a few fungi also tend to be parasitic, and they tend to rely on a host to absorb their nutrients from. Now, the body of a fungus is called hyphae, and it's this kind of clump of individual filaments. Okay, and a mass of filaments is called a mycelium, and an individual hyphae can grow up to 18 feet per day. Okay, it can grow very quickly. And you can have septate fungi that have cross walls dividing the hyphae, and then non-septate fungi don't have the cross walls. Something that's good to know, fungal cell structure, the cell walls are going to contain chitin instead of cellulose. And chitin is also found in the exoskeleton of insects and lobsters and crabs and crustaceans and arthropods. Their energy reserve is glycogen, just like animal cells. And fungi kind of move toward a food source very slowly by growing towards it. Just to show you some pictures here, here we've got fungus growing on corn tortilla. If you've ever opened your refrigerator and seen a little science experiment growing in there, okay, it's probably just fungi that's growing. And here's some fungal hyphae that have spores on them. And then we've got some non-septate and some septate hyphae. The septate hyphae do have the cross walls, whereas the non-septate hyphae do not. Now, as far as fungal reproduction, a lot of them live on dry land and they produce these wind-blown spores. Okay? And so you can have haploid reproductive cells that germinate and develop into a new mycelium, which is asexual kind of reproduction, or you can have sexual reproduction that occurs by conjugation of positive and negative mating types, and after they fuse you get a zygote. And they don't always fuse just immediately. Sometimes it takes a little time. And then the zygote will undergo meiosis, which will produce haploid spores, and the cycle will begin again. Okay. So just to show you, these are some tiny spores that are just being blown into the air. Okay. This is one reason why you'll see in a yard or in grass mushrooms that are in a little circle or they're very close to each other. Some people call it a fairy circle, just because the spores don't travel very far. So mushrooms that sprout up usually are very close together. Now, just some fungal diseases. They're kind of interesting. Tinnias. Skin infections can be caused by a fungus. Athlete's foot, you can catch that like in gyms or in showers, in jails, places like that. And basically, it just tends to eat at your feet. Okay, and ringworm is technically not a worm. It's actually can be caused by several different fungi, and the fungus is going to release enzymes that degrade keratin and collagen in the skin. It's a fungal infection. Black mold. Black mold, or what's called sick building syndrome, grows really well in dark, unventilated locations, and individuals can be exposed to toxins produced by this fungus. They can experience allergy symptoms or flu-like symptoms, headache, fatigue, like dermatitis. They may kind of itch a little bit. And you heard a lot about black mold in our area a few years ago. You don't hear as much of it right now, but or not as much. But black mold can really make people sick, hence the name. Histoplasmosis. That's a common soil fungus that's associated with bird droppings, and people can get similar symptoms. That is, they're similar to tuberculosis or TB. They can have lots of lung congestion, coughing, things like that. And then candidiasis, or what's called by Candida albicans, that's infections of the vagina or the mouth. And that's what happens when normal flora is disturbed by antibiotics or immunocompromised patients or babies, like brand new babies. Candidiasis is the leading cause of yeast infections. Okay. And then it also causes thrush in the mouth. Now, thrush, if it goes on in immunocompromised patients like HIV patients or newborn babies, that can damage the heart and the brain, other organisms. Okay. And then just to show you a couple of pictures here, this is histoplasmosis, okay, this cloudiness in the lung tissue area. And then this is black mold. Okay. And both of these things can make a person very, very sick. And this is black mold that's really out of control. And I would dare say this building would probably just need to be gutted. This can make someone really, really sick. And some other pictures here. On the left, the foot picture, obviously that's athlete's foot. Athlete's foot itches so much. And definitely you can have topical creams to put on it. This is also athlete's foot right here. If someone scratches a whole lot, they can scratch themselves so much they make their feet bleed. But topical creams and things like that will work. Going to a dermatologist helps. And then ringworm, this is what it looks like. Okay. You can get medicine for that too. And over here, this is thrush. And thrush, you just get a white kind of coating on the top of the tongue and inside the mouth. Okay. Now, fungi are traditionally grouped off based on their mode of sexual reproduction. Okay. And these five, you can have club fungi, which are mostly mushrooms. You can have sac fungi, like morels and truffles, all that. AM fungi, mycorrhizae, and we'll talk about that. They tend to have a mutualistic relationship between the soil and the roots of most plants. Zygospore fungi, most of them are saprotrophs, some of them are parasites, and then you have chytrids, which tend to be marine fungi, which we'll talk about here in just a second. Okay. Now, chytrid fungi, they are aquatic, some of them are parasitic, and they play a big part in decay and digestion of dead aquatic organisms. Okay. And here you've got these aquatic chytrids that have penetrated the cell wall in this picture of this dinoflagellate, and they're absorbing nutrients meant for the host, and they'll produce these flagellated zoospores that'll go on to parasitize other protists. Okay, right there. So they basically break down dead things that are in the water. These chytrid fungi. They're just these little round, spherical little fungi here. Now, zygospore fungi, black bread mold, that's zygospore fungi. They're mainly saprotrophs. Some are parasites of small soil protists or worms or insects, okay, of bread, things like that. And this is their life cycle right here. Basically, you've got, let's see, positive and negative strains, and they will kind of connect with each other here. And when they connect, and they'll fertilize and produce a zygospore, which will then go through meiosis and drop these little spores. You'll have asexual reproduction, and then the whole cycle just starts all over. You don't have to know details about this life cycle, just wanted to show it to you. Now, sac fungi. Sac fungi, those are morels, truffles, cup fungi, like that. Here we've got a picture of a couple of pictures of sac fungi. Just so you know, dogs and pigs are trained to sniff out truffles. Truffles are used in gourmet food. If you've ever seen truffle oil at like Whole Foods or the granary, someplace like that, they are, very high dollar food that you can get. And morels are actually collected by chefs, and you have to be careful because false morels, those can be poisonous. Okay, so you have to know if what you're looking for if you're going to go in the woods and look for sac fungi. Okay, even real morels, you don't want to eat them raw because they're saprophytes, and they secrete digestive enzymes that are capable of digesting wood and leaves. And if we consume them prior to cooking them, then those enzymes are still activated, and the enzymes will cause a lot of digestive upset, just so you know. And by the way, truffle oil, 8 ounces of it, last price I looked at was $62. Okay, it's pretty expensive. But this is some sac fungi, and approximately 75% of all known fungi are considered to be sac fungi. Okay. Now, some more sac fungi you might have seen. Powdery mildew, that tends to grow on plant leaves. Chestnut blight, Dutch elm disease, anything like that, that's sac fungi. Penicillin, which is very important, antibiotic. And then also you have sac fungi that helps produce like blue cheese. You have selected yeast that are added to sterile grape juice to make wine. Okay, and when they ferment, they're going to make ethanol and carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide and ethanol are kept in beer and sparkling wine, but in wine, actually, the carbon dioxide is going to be released. Okay, sparkling wine tends to keep the carbon dioxide, okay, hence the bubbles, but carbon dioxide from other kinds of wine is just going to be released. Okay, so you know. Okay, but yeasts fall into sac fungi. You can have brewer's yeast, which is used to make recreational beverages. Okay, and here we've got some penicillin here on the left. We've got powdery mildew right there. Okay, and here's some yeast cells right there. And you can have sexual or asexual reproduction. Okay, you can have, sorry about that, you can have ascocarp, which produces sexual spores as a part of sexual reproduction. You can have asexual reproduction through budding. Okay, asexual budding happens when you get a small cell that's pinched off and then grows to full size and produces spores. And I forgot to mention, bread is also made, through yeast. And carbon dioxide produced by yeast makes the dough rise, and the ethanol is going to evaporate out of the bread. And the gas products are going to be preserved as the bread bakes, okay, which helps it get bigger. Now, club fungi, right here, and okay, it's got basidiums in it, and it's contained within a basidiocarp. Okay, so you've got fusion of positive and negative hyphae, which helps basically through reproduction. Sexual reproduction is most common in club fungi. Okay, you can have spores, with asexual reproduction, but mostly it's sexual reproduction. Just so you know, the death cap mushroom, there's a picture of it right here. This white mushroom causes 90% of fatalities related to mushroom poisoning. And you might have seen red and yellow mushrooms kind of growing out in the woods. They're very common. Those are Amanita mushrooms, and they can also make you very, very sick. The problem with Amanitas phalloides, the poison interferes with RNA transcription because it inhibits RNA polymerase. Okay, so the victim who eats these tends to die from liver and kidney failure. And RNA polymerase is an enzyme that transcribes DNA and RNA. So basically, you're not able to make RNA, so you're not able to carry out normal cell functions, so you die very quickly. Okay. Now, Amanita mushrooms that are red and yellow, those symptoms tend to be similar to acute alcohol intoxication. You can get staggering, delirium, vomiting, kind of manic sort of feelings, things like that. And then you also can tend to have some other kinds of mushrooms that are hallucinogenic. Some of them are used in religious ceremonies all over the world. Okay, there's this I'm not saying it right, psilocybe mexicana, okay, or psilocybin mexicana, contains psilocybin, which is a structural analog of LSD, okay, things like that. So you have to be very careful on which mushrooms you're eating. If you're going to look for them in the woods, you need to know which ones are poisonous and which ones aren't, and which ones can make you have kind of LSD sort of effects, which ones don't. And then there's also a fungal kind of condition that can cause lots of hysteria and hallucinations, and that is ergotism, or what's called rye poisoning. Okay, an ergot fungus, which are these dark purplish black little parts that get into rye, it infects the rye and replaces the grain with these black bodies of fungus that have hyphae, and the fungus releases these toxic alkaloids that causes ergotism. Okay, when the rye is ground into bread. And ergot contains lysergic acid, and LSD is actually made from that. And get this, I thought this was interesting. Based on recorded symptoms, historians believe that people who were accused of practicing witchcraft in Salem, Massachusetts during the 17th century, some historians think that they were probably suffering from ergotism. Okay. They found evidence of rye poisoning all throughout that area in Massachusetts. And they also speculate that ergotism is to blame for supposed demonic possession throughout many centuries. Okay. And what you get with ergotism is vomiting, intense heat and cold, hysteria, seeing things, hallucinating, a yellow face, and then lesions on the hands and feet. Okay. Now, sexual reproduction, just to show you this, okay, you can get spores like this that are released. You get positive and negative. They're going to have fusion and goes through meiosis. Whole process starts again. And here's some examples of club fungi right there that you've probably seen before. Now, some other kinds of club fungi. You can have smut and rust that parasitizes some crops that we eat a lot of. Hold on. Okay, there we are. And wheat rust can be controlled by producing new resistant strains of wheat. And smut and rust, they're really important because they can destroy crops every year, and so it's something that farmers pay a lot of attention to. Corn smut grows between the corn kernels and secretes substances that causes these big swollen tumor swellings to develop, and they can destroy crops. And so farmers try really hard to keep a handle on these smut and the rust that can appear on their crops like wheat, rye, oats, and corn. Now, some symbiotic relationships of fungi. You can have lichens. Lichens are really important in the food chain, like for reindeer or caribou and other animals that live way up, like in the Arctic Circle or where it's very, very cold. They have associations between fungi and cyanobacteria or green algae, and they're really good at getting nutrients and water. Okay, and they can colonize in really rocky surfaces and poor soil where other organisms like plants and all can't grow. And there are three characteristic forms of lichens. You can have crustose, fruticose, or foliose. And there are three layers. Okay, you have fungi layers that are on the top and the bottom, and then you have a middle layer of photosynthetic cells, and they help each other because photosynthesis is going to give the fungus nutrients, and the fungi portion offers protection from predators and drying out, and also delivers water. Okay, and just to show you some fungi here, symbiotic relationships, mycorrhizal fungi, they have a symbiotic mutualistic relationship with plant roots, and they help plants grow more successfully in soils that don't have a lot of nutrients. Okay? And the fungi could live on the outside surface of the roots, or it can penetrate the root tissue. And it's good because the plant provides nutrients to the fungus, and the fungi bring water and minerals to the plant. Okay, and their hyphae provide lots of surface area for water absorption. All right, we are done with the microbiology PowerPoints. Thank you very much.